Welcome, everybody. This is the talk Exploring Art Direction with Twinmotion and Unreal Engine. My name is Simon Blakeney. I'm a technical accounts manager at Epic Games, based in the UK.
I'm Ellen King, an art director with the Art Directors Guild.
And I'm Juan Gomez, Solution Architect Director, Epic Games.
So art direction, for TV and film specifically, if you're not aware, is narrative storytelling via the environment. So the production designer and the art department create the environment based on the script and the discussions with the director and producers and other creatives to make the best story possible for you, the viewer.
Okay. So this is the Epic ecosystem. And what we're going to do as part of this presentation is we're going to highlight two tools in particular, so Twinmotion and Unreal Engine. We're also going to touch on some of the content part of the ecosystem, and that's our Quixel content and Sketchfab content. So just a quick, brief introduction to Twinmotion. Twinmotion is fast and easy to use. It's a real-time visualization tool, and we'll look at some of the components of how it can be used for art direction. It has a simple interface. It has libraries of objects straight out of the box, so you can drag and drop these in to build up your scenes really quickly. It's good for set dressing, and hopefully we'll see some examples of that and speak with Ellen about that. It has presentation tools, various different forms, cloud-based and local, and it's based on the real-time rendering solutions from Unreal Engine. And Unreal Engine, we're going to be looking at 5.3. The work done in Twinmotion, we can then export that over to Unreal Engine and use that in virtual production workflows. We'll also take a look at some of the collaborative tools that we ship as standard templates, and also virtual cameras, which Juan will go over. We'll finally look at proof of concept for pushing our Twinmotion scene onto the wall in the case of an ICVFX shoot.
So this is Paper Girls. I don't know if anyone saw that. It came out about 2 years ago, Amazon Prime, and it used no virtual production at all. So what Simon's going to show you is a very simple SketchUp model that I had pushed to Twinmotion 2 years ago when there were, I think, maybe one LED stage total in Chicago, and how he was able to leverage that asset into a very, very, very good-looking LED wall set.
Okay. So let's start with Twinmotion for art direction. And what I'd like to do is just show you some of the content that other parts of our community are creating using Twinmotion. It ranges all across different industries, from automotive, architecture. We're seeing it being used in very creative edge cases as well. So yeah, really powerful examples that you can see here over time. And the ease of use of it is something that we want to demonstrate as part of this talk as well for the design process. So you don't have to just create really nice visualizations with this. You can use the fast iteration speed of Twinmotion to use it at any stage. So yeah, really excited to share that with you next. So first of all, I want to go through different parts of Twinmotion, so you're familiar with those and how they might apply to your own projects. We'll start with imports. So there are 4 main types of import mechanisms in Twinmotion. We have the ability to bring in geometry, and this is everything from FBX files, SketchUp files, OBJ files, Cinema 4D, and also our native file formats, Datasmith. So you could export from various different external DLL packages, such as Max and Revit and Rhino, and then bring those in via the Datasmith format. We also have the ability to use a direct link. So if you have Rhino, for instance, on your machine, and you have Twinmotion on that same machine, you can pair them together with a connection, and then any changes that you make in your scene in Rhino will instantly be reflected in Twinmotion. So all of the added benefit you've got from the visualization of lighting, of camera work in Twinmotion, you'll have that synced with the content from that external package. We also have the ability to bring in landscapes, so TXT files, XYZ files, and also point clouds files. So I think that's really interesting because if you've LiDAR scanned a set, a film set, for instance, you can bring in that LiDAR data set as an E57, a PTS file, and then you can use that as contextual information. So just very quickly, I'm going to show you a video of that import process, and it really is super simple. So that was a couple of clicks, and we're bringing in the SketchUp file that Ellen created.
In this SketchUp file, again, as I said, made 2 years ago, very, very simple. It wasn't made to be particularly high fidelity. It was just for some kind of blocking and lighting studies and just to get a sense of the stage space before we built the physical set out of wood and plaster and bricks. But when you see what they've done, so it doesn't look great. It looks like SketchUp, right? This is what, and nobody wants to present this to anybody because the director will immediately go, well, it looks awful. But the great thing about Twinmotion is you turn on a few great materials and some decent lighting, and suddenly you have something that's really approaching what you'd actually see on set. And that is something definitely worth showing to your stakeholders and approvers.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the message, the speed of this, the fast iteration speed.
It imports it that fast. Like it's not like a multi-day process, like, it's just import 2 seconds. Okay, there, ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. So next section, the library. The library is full of all sorts of goodies, and you can build up environments, sci-fi environments, all sorts of different scenarios from just what's in the box from the Twinmotion side. We also have a link to Sketchfab files. That's over 700,000 assets from the community that you can just drag and drop into Twinmotion. And I think I've lost my sound. No, I'm back. So yeah, 700,000 assets that you can drag and drop into Twinmotion. Yeah,
such a time saver.
Yeah, yeah. So you could say, okay, I put in a search term of a fish, and then all of a sudden you get 50 results of a fish, and you just bring those in. We also have megascans, the library there, the photogrammetry assets that we create. And again, you can just drag and drop those in place. You can see we've got materials, vegetation, we've got light sources, we have HDRI environments as well, so if you really want to quickly change the look and feel of your scene, the HDRIs are perfect for that. We also have measurement tools and other bits and pieces. So this is a quick demonstration of bringing in one of the default assets that's in the Twinmotion library. If I recall, it's a notepad. Oh no, it's a set of pencils. So you can see that that's just been dragged and dropped in. You can then transform that, rotate it, scale it, and you can do this as much as you want. So you could have hundreds of objects in the scene. So when you import data into Twinmotion, it goes into the scene graph, the hierarchy. But you might want to share that with another project. You might want to reuse assets at a later stage. So we have something called the user library. And with this, you drag and drop from you right-click on the object in the hierarchy. You say you want to add it to the user library. And that's then persistent in the folder for sharing that user library in all the projects that you do from there onwards. You can also use a network folder if you wanted to. So if multiple machines want to connect to that same library location, you can do that as well.
The great thing about that is that, like, as a single user on a smaller project, I can keep my favorite objects easily at hand. I don't have to keep re-importing them, especially if I've already, when they come in from SketchUp, the materials are like not so great, right? You want to put nice Unreal or Twinmotion materials on them so they look fantastic. And I don't want to do that every single time I want to put in my scene. The other wonderful thing about that is upon a bigger project, like For All Mankind, and I have 20 artists using Twinmotion on a space station, we're using the same parts over and over and over again. And there's no reason everyone has to go through that process. So we can just have a network drive full of the modules and the chairs and the specific pieces that we built for our show.
Yeah, fantastic. Moving on to the populate tool. So it might be that you've set up your scene and you might have just a really small environment, but you want to see how that looks in a larger context. So what we have is the populate tool, and this links into OpenStreetMaps. So what we can do is we can type in a location wherever you want in the world that has OSM data, select the area, and then press the download and place button, and that will pull that from the online servers and populate it in the scene for you. So there's a quick demonstration of that. We go to the populate tool, we go to urban. I've typed in New York here, and then just browse in slightly to the left to see Manhattan. So you can zoom in and out to select different sizes of locations. And then when we press this button, we'll see this come in. And Ellen, do you want to maybe talk about
Yeah, the great thing about this particular tool, there's the three super fantastic things about it right off the bat. One is you save all that time doing it yourself, like pulling it from Google Maps, like making the street, putting in some block buildings. So that's really helpful. Even if your set never goes out into a physical location in the world, it's also helpful to locate, like that house in the kitchen that you're going to demonstrate, is married to an exterior location at a real place that we're completely divorced from. But we want to make sure that the lighting matches. So if you place it in the world at the correct place, then your son and you're automatically doing that step as well. And then the other thing that's really fantastic is if it's a place you just can't go to. Like I was recently working in Los Angeles for a location that was in Bulgaria. I couldn't send the Bulgarian team to go do the surveying for me. They were busy doing other things. I was like, well, look, I just pull it from the populate tool, and I don't need to send anybody anywhere. I've got the basic pieces of Bulgaria in my computer in Los Angeles.
Fantastic. Object manipulation. So beyond just transforming, moving, scaling, rotating, we've also got two additional new tools which are really useful for putting objects quickly into your scene. So the first one is move with collision. And what you do here is you drag and drop an item from the library, but then it can use the bounding boxes of that object to ensure that it doesn't overlap with something else in your scene. So you can see, I think this was a fridge that was brought in, but if you move the handle, the transform, and just wait a moment for that to work. So you can see that it's butted up against the wall automatically for you, so you can start to slot pieces in really, really quickly without much effort. The second tool there is, second tool there is gravity. So let's see if the gravity one will play. Sorry, bear with me a sec. Yeah, so on the right-hand side, you can see I think those were bagels that I've brought in. You press the gravity button, and then it just drops that into place. So it's using the bounding areas again. But we can do that with lots of objects. So it might be that you have a bowl and you want to fill it really quickly with grapes or something.
I've done that before. Before this tool existed, I spent half an hour placing fruit in a bowl for an architectural project, and I was sitting there thinking, this is such a waste of time.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and we see people go absolutely crazy with this tool.
It's also really fun just to throw things in Twinmotion and watch them scatter all over the place.
Yeah. So moving on to view sets. So with view sets, this is really handy if you want to configure a layout, but you want to have a different layout in the same project. So if I just go through to the next one. So this is an example of three different, sorry, I'm dropping out a little bit on the mic. This is an example of three options that you can toggle in Twinmotion. View set one, you can see, has a pineapple and a loaf of bread. The second one has a mixer, I think, and then the third one has apples, but we can toggle through those really quickly. So this video will show you an example of that. I'm not sure if that's me that's doing that. So what I've done is I've gone to the view set menu and I've set up three different view sets adds to that. So when you want to configure what you have in place for the different view sets, you change the visibility of those objects on scene and scene hierarchy, and then when you click the update button, that will then set them in place. So when you then toggle the different view sets, you'll be able to, sorry, I'm breaking up quite a lot at the moment. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Thanks very much. Yeah. Yeah, so when you start to toggle those layers on and off and press the update button, you're able to then configure them to the different view sets.
And these view sets are absolutely vital, and I would not actually be able to use Twinmotion effectively without them, because I never get to present just one view. We have different angles in the sets to show where the camera might be. You know, when you watch a TV show, you see one person's point of view, and you see the other person's point of view, so there's always multiple points of view, and you want to represent that. But you also want to represent different lighting conditions, perhaps, and in the particular case of Paper Girls in this kitchen, we also had a time change because she was time traveling. So there was a 1980s version and a very distinctly different 1990s version, and then a 2000s version. And to be able to use the exact same assets and not have to re-Photoshop them, just switch the view sets on and off to show people how that changeover was happening was intensely valuable.
Yeah, brilliant. So moving on to materials, we have a lot of flexibility with the materials in Twinmotion. And for those users that are used to Unreal Engine, you might really like this because it's just such an easy workflow. You drag and drop. Yeah, you can. Yeah, and you can have hundreds of materials that you can switch literally within a minute if you wanted to.
And they're easy to customize as well, which a lot of people don't realize when they open it. It comes with a lot of architectural paints, floors, and things, but it's so easy to just pop into the details of it and swap out the textures to your own custom material, and it looks amazing. Absolutely,
yeah. And here you can see some of those values on the right-hand side. So we have the UVs, the UV mapping that we can rotate and we can scale. So commonly, if you bring in objects, you might not have the right scale, and it's really annoying, but you can just use this slider to change that. So this is a quick demonstration of the materials in Twinmotion. You click on the Materials tab at the bottom. You then select a material from the bottom, and you can just drag and drop it onto whatever you want. So yeah, very, 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 very quick. And here I'm just changing a few aspects of the physically based materials on the side, in the details panel. And yeah, do you want to talk about maybe the colors?
Yeah, one of the other key things you can do here with this really super simple interface is if you're working in the real world, you need to match things in the real world to this world, and you want to represent colors accurately. So most of the major paint manufacturers release their hex codes for all of their color formulations. So instead of having to kind of guess at like what is Benjamin Moore 212, I can actually pull the hex code from it and pop it into a satin paint, a flat paint, or whatever paint right in here in Twinmotion, and then know that it's accurate and that it's going to behave correctly in the rendering.
Yeah, and then you can save those onto the user library and use them at a later date.
We have 50 different shades of metallic on For All Mankind.
Wow. One thing you wouldn't have seen, anyone that's using Twinmotion at the moment, is that we have early access for Adobe Substance materials as well. I find this really exciting, but that's me. You can start to look at the parameters of the Substance materials and change those in Twinmotion. So I think people will love this because there's so many different variations then that you can create from that Adobe source.
Absolutely, because nobody wants to just use what's out of the box. You want to put your own stamp on it.
Exactly.
You want to make sure it's correct for your show, it's got the right ambiance or the right mood. So to be able to tweak it directly here instead of having to go back and find those other little parts is really helpful as far as making things really fast. That's like the beauty of Twinmotion. It's all really fast.
Yeah, brilliant. Lighting. So there are three main choices of lighting. We have real-time standard, and that's been the standard for the longest time. We then introduced the path tracer a couple of versions ago. And the path tracer, what that does is it represents a physically accurate bounce of light around a space. So you can start to get pretty accurate representations of what it should be in the real world. We've just recently, in the last version, introduced real-time Lumen, so in the preview versions.
I'm excited about that.
Excited already about it, yeah. So it's literally one click and you turn on Lumen. So just to give you a reference of this, no changes whatsoever to the lighting in the scene. This is just as it came in with the real-time standard lighting. You can see on the real-time Lumen that it's added a lot of bounce light. But the beauty of this is the speed. So there's no real render differences between real-time standard and real-time Lumen. Path Tracer, the only downside to this is that it takes a long time. So
It can, yeah. And it's great for still renderings, but it does tend to bog you down when people are standing over your shoulder watching. But the really exciting thing about Lumen coming to, and both Path Tracer and real-time standard, is that I never want to produce a rendering that we can't actually produce on stage.
Yeah.
The goal is to represent what we're going to build. So the DP and the camera department are going to be very upset at me if I propose some kind of magical lighting scenario that cannot be achieved. So we want to get as close to accurate as possible. And in conjunction with these tools, the IES profiles built into Twinmotion that you can also get from the Epic library are super valuable for making sure you have lights that behave as if real lights would.
Yeah, yeah. And this just shows that quick switch. So I'll speed up the slides slightly after this as well, just to catch up a bit. But yeah, you can see just a flick of the switch there, and you've got Lumen. So very minimal effort. Just briefly on this, we've just introduced animated FBX files as well. So if you bake your keyframes in something like 3D Studio Max and Maya, you can now bring that into Twinmotion, and we've got an additional menu option for that on the imports. Virtual reality, this is just a quick example of virtual reality. So if you have, say, an Oculus Quest 2 headset or a HTC Vive Pro, you click that VR button and then it will bring you into this view. What I've done here is, because it's running on the laptop, stripped out the lighting just to make it super fast.
This is really helpful when you're using your Twinmotion models to communicate with producers or directors, and you want to give them that more immersive experience that they feel like stepping away from the flat screen. Some people absolutely love it. Some people get a little dizzy and don't want to do it. Yep. But it gives you more options to be able to communicate, because everyone has a different communication style, and it's part of my job to figure out what's going to be the most effective for those people.
Local exports. So one of the really key fundamental parts of Twinmotion that separates it from Unreal Engine is the ease of exporting different types of files. So here, if we go to local exports, so local to our machine, we can export images, videos, panoramic images, executables. So these are full 3D scenes that you send off to a client, and then they can navigate through that freely. It's really, really flexible there. This is an example of how that's made. So here we have the media tab. We can select different image views very quickly. You can see that some are configured with depth of field and other settings. If we just navigate to a new view position here, we can click the add button, and then we've got a new image in our library, so we can have hundreds of these different variations in a very short amount of time. This is an animation where we've got one keyframe, we've moved the camera, we've added another keyframe. We might want to change maybe the lighting compensation on one keyframe. We can do that as well with an update. So yeah, super, super flexible.
Incredibly flexible, and you can update it like with one click. And you're like, I changed the lighting, I've moved the props around. Okay, just export it again, not a big deal. And the other great thing about those presenter tools that UE actually doesn't have. It's really hard to share a UE project with someone who doesn't have a great computer, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So on every show I work on with Twinmotion, I actually set up an internal website, and I export out the walkthroughs, and I also export out panorama sets, kind of very Matterport style, where you can teleport around in different places and look around in 360. Those not only work on the website, so I can just send people one link to go look at it anytime they want to, if they're remote or if we're in a meeting, but they can also, there's a button to go into VR mode, either just using the gyro in your phone or iPad or in your headset. So you can do that via the web, like with no setup at all. It's literally that easy. You just send them this link and it's just ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. So moving on to the cloud side of things. So you can push some of the exports to the cloud. And the two types there are the panoramic sets that Ellen mentioned, and a presentation mode. So this uses pixel stream, and it offsets the GPU load from your local machine and then puts it onto a cloud instance. So what that means in essence is you can send this to somebody, and then from their phone or their whatever web browser or whatever device they've got, they can access this 3D scene in the full fidelity that you intended it to be delivered in. And this is an example of that. So if you've got a phone, you can scan this QR code if you want to and see a live example of Erin's house as a panoramic set. So the stages here is you select the panoramic images, you then export that to the cloud. We have a Twinmotion cloud storage area where you can select all of your projects. You can set up QR codes, you can embed this with iframes, and then deliver that straight to the browser.
And the wonderful thing about being able to give people this opportunity to look around inside is you can give your stakeholders 2D images all day long, and so they'll still not get it necessarily. But if you give them the ability to hold in their hand an immersive experience, you get a lot less of the onset, I didn't think it would look like this, which is just like the worst thing an art director wants to hear. Because these sets cost thousands, if not millions of dollars to build, plus a lot of time. And holding up the camera is the biggest sin. So if you want to make sure that when you show up on set, you've presented exactly what everyone has agreed to and that they're going to like it when they get there.
Brilliant. So the next step we're going to take is just to export our Twinmotion scene to Unreal Engine. And the reason that we would do this is if we wanted to start to add interactivity to our environment, we can't do that in Twinmotion. But we can do that if we take it further into Unreal Engine. And for those of you that are familiar with Unreal Engine, there's so much you can do there. You can make games, you can make VR experiences, you can go into virtual production. The possibilities are limitless, and you can make that as bespoke as you want, developing your own tools surrounding that as well. So this is just a quick example of how to export from Twinmotion. Dead simple, file, export. You export to u.datasmith, and then you can import that straight into Unreal Engine. If those of you using Unreal are familiar with data prep as well, you can go through a data prep pipeline to start to automatically change materials and filter through other types of fixes that you can repeat over and over. And we're going to move over to Unreal Engine for Art Direction now. And I'll just briefly go over the collaborative side and then pass this over to Juan. So just one prerequisite when you're going over to the Unreal Engine side, you need to go to the marketplace and just download the Datasmith Twinmotion content for Unreal Engine code plugin. So this would just make sure that everything is clean when it comes into Unreal Engine. So the process here, if we have Datasmith enabled, is to go to our assets window, and we can select Datasmith, and then we can go to File Import. We then select the u.datasmith file that we exported from Twinmotion. We set it into our content folder. We have a few different options here for turning off geometry, lights, animation, etc. And then this shows you what that process is. So when we have an Unreal Engine scene, because we're bringing in lighting from the Twinmotion side, we're just disabling, so we're taking out all of the lighting from the template in Unreal. We then bring in that Datasmith file, and we just give this a moment to load. And in a second, you'll see Erin's house. Ellen, I don't know if you want to maybe talk a little bit about whether or not you've explored Unreal Engine.
Well, I did the fellowship in 2020. So personally, yes, I have explored Unreal Engine, but in an art department situation, most of my wonderful artists don't have a month to learn Unreal Engine. Yeah. So, and I can't be the one person who uses it because I'm usually stuck in a lot of meetings running around and figuring out what everyone else is doing. So it has been really great to have them feed all of their amazing talent straight into Twinmotion very, very simply. In five minutes flat, I can have someone up and running. An hour later, it's going to look amazing. So on Mankind, most recently, I started with 2 people who had touched Twinmotion, and by the end of the season, all 20 people were using Twinmotion every day. And it would.
Fantastic. So now that we've got our project in Unreal Engine, we can look at the different tools that we could maybe make collaborations with or other interactions. So in Unreal Engine, we offer a template starting position for collaboration, and this is called the Collab Viewer. So if you go to a new project, either automotive or architecture, select the Collab Viewer. This will give you a base where we have lots of tools out of the box that can be used with that person perspective. So what you need to do here is import your scene into the collab templates or migrate that over from another project. We can then package up our Unreal Engine project as an executable. And then once we have it in an executable form, we can share that with other people on our network or in other locations. You just need to make sure that you have visibility to it. So if you're blocked by a firewall, you wouldn't want to go down this route. So just briefly, what I want to mention here is that we set up this collaboration session with a guy called Philippe. And Philippe is an absolutely phenomenal artist that we'd highly recommend to anyone out there. So please speak to Juan if you want to know more on that. So this is the collaborative viewer. So you set up a host session. And you can see that Philippe, in this case, has gone into Erin's house, which is on the collab template exports. He's able to navigate around this freely wherever he wants to. And I've connected as a client to that session. So in a moment, you'll see my avatar come into this space as well. So we'll just give that a second. So there I am. And we can move around. We can change the way that we move. This supports virtual reality as well, if you wanted it to. We can annotate things, so mark up, and it just attaches it to the object that you clicked on. We can take measurements of various different aspects of the scene. So if you imagine trying to work out where a camera might go, do you have the space, you can start to measure that up. And we can do all sorts of other things like use this for design review. We can use an X-ray material to see through walls. We can click on objects and it pings you to inform others where you're looking. And it also comes with voice over IP, so you can talk to each other through that space.
And it's worth noting that this collaborative viewer is actually not the same thing as virtual scouting, even though it's doing a lot of the same functions. So it doesn't have, it's a much simpler version of virtual scouting.
Yeah.
It's lighter and easier for you to do things specific to set design and art direction rather than just like the whole world needs to be examined.
Yeah. So let's move on. And if you want to find out more about that, we do have lots of documentation. So we've got a webinar based around automotive spaces, and that includes a virtual reality example. We have a blog post for architecture, and there's lots of content out there for you to reference. Juan.
Perfect. Let me control. Hi, everybody. So first of all, I would like to know how many of you are art directors or production designer? Please raise your hand. Good. And how many uses Twinmotion and Unreal Engine? Okay, good. So I like the basically story we're telling here is like how we can collaborate with art directors, production designers, cinematographers, Unreal Engine artists, and so on. So the power, like we can see how you can take an art director scene that it comes straight from their package of choice, SketchUp, Revit, whatever, and then they can carry on their art all the way to Twinmotion, augment it, make it even fast by doing with the fast tool. They can actually make it even more pretty, and then you can actually push it into Unreal Engine just to leverage some of these tools. So this is a way how you can actually have the art departments, production designers, own the art all the way to potentially the final result, the pixels on the wall, right? So this is actually really, really powerful for them. It's really powerful for you as well, because now you can actually let them know they are part of your team. It's a true collaboration between all of you guys. So I think this is a really good story to tell. It's very powerful because in the past, some of the art directors, and Ellen can actually speak about that, in the past, the art directors, they feel they did a really good and hard work. They work really hard just to make sure their designs are perfect and get approved, and somebody takes over, and they have to say bye-bye to the design. And that's heartbreaking, right? So we're trying to change that with Unreal Engine and Epic Games ecosystem tools. So I want to highlight here the power of Unreal Engine with virtual production, just to work with the cinematographers, work with the production designers. Because a lot of times, you need to visualize. You need to visualize how is this set can be shot on an LED wall, or how this set can actually be executed on a real set. But first, you need to plan, make sure like everything that is in the director's mind, the DP minds, in the production designer's mind, it's actually going to work once they build the set. So that's the power of like visualization. So first, I want to introduce you. Some of you guys know about virtual cameras, and why virtual cameras for an art director? Right? You might ask. Well, a lot of times, and Ellen can also give some insight if I let her talk. Sometimes, I'm pretty sure a famous VP will come and they have a meeting where they have the director, production designer, art directors, cinematographers, and they talk about how they're going to execute the project. And a lot of times, they just want to see the designs, the set, with something similar to what they're going to use at the end, with a camera, right? They want to actually see, okay, give me a camera with a 16:9 film bag, or they will request for this. I want to see how does it look with a 50mm lens with an f-stop. They be speaking that language because they know at the end what they care is like, is that composition going to work? Is the distance on that set is going to work? Is the placement of the character it is going to work? Do we need to extend the hallway just because I have to now put some 8Ks on some big area lights? So they need to have this conversation. So the best to do is have this conversation virtually with a virtual camera, right? So here, I'm just putting a highlight in, we have a free app. It's called LiveLink VCam. You can download it, Apple Store, and it actually works on an iPhone or an iPad, as long as it has ARKit enabled. And then you can actually now have a virtual camera in your hands. It basically drives a cinema camera actor, which will simulate what a real camera will do. So this is the closest to reality for a DP, or even for you guys. If you guys want to pitch or prove to your team, hey, if you're going to use these lenses, you might not have a DP working with you, but you might request, hey, can you please find out what is the lens kit and what is the camera that the DP is going to shoot? And then you go in and then you visualize, how is this possible on set? And then you can actually send a still, send a video, and then you can send it to the piece, and they have a really good idea. You have some orthographic shots where you can show how is the camera fitting. Do we have enough room for a dolly, for a crane? So this is really important. And it's super easy to use. You basically activate the plugin. You have two plugins, virtual camera and virtual camera core. Then you go and then create a virtual, this has a laser. Oh, sorry. I thought it has a laser. Anyway, you can just create a VCam actor, and then you enable it. Once you enable it, you go into your iPad, type the IP of that computer, hit connect, boom, you have a virtual camera in your hands. Also, what is really powerful, and I'm just going to show the next slide, what is really powerful is that you can now give that VCam to the DP, the cinematographer, the art director, production designer. You say, you don't need to know how to use Unreal Engine. Just grab this iPad, and it's very intuitive. And if they are within your network, let's say if they are within the Wi-Fi, they can be, let's say your artist is upstairs, and then you are in a review room, downstairs, and they connect to the Wi-Fi. As long as they're in the same Wi-Fi, you just give them the IP of the computer upstairs. And now the DP or your production designer can just have a VCam move around, change lenses, and start kind of visualizing how they're going to execute the shoot. And they can also, and the power is you have now your scene in Unreal Engine. So you can actually say, can you please make the tile, let's change the color of the tile, and then change it. Can you please add a prop? Can you please change this? So now you have the full power of Unreal Engine on an iPad, right? And you are collaborating. And if you even want to go even more crazy, you can have a whole team in multi-year succession. And the director, DP, or whatever can just request anything they want, right? Very powerful. Even if the DP or your client is in another country or another state, whatever, as long as they are in the same network, and then you can actually give them the IP, and they can type the IP, put the IP on your iPad, and they can actually remotely, from far away, they can actually be part of this collaboration. This is very powerful. I have done it before where I have work with people all over the place, and we're like, just give me your IP address. To type it, I don't have to download Unreal Engine. I don't have to have the whole project. I just need to have the app. I created a tutorial of how to do all this. This includes Twinmotion to Unreal Engine, kind of like what Simon showed. And then it goes step by step of how to just use the VCAM, Unreal Engine VCAM, using a Twinmotion scene. So, yeah. I also want to talk about stage planning. I've been working with Ellen in a few projects now. I work with Andrew Jones. I work with a lot of production design and art directors. And this is really important, planning, stage planning.
It's all we do is plan.
Right? So Unreal Engine plays a really big role on that. It's about planning. So here we took the scene that we had in Unreal Engine, and then first we just drop a couple of people just to placement of like what is going to look my framing once we're going to shoot this. And let's imagine this is a set. So they first, they just place the characters. They can do whatever set, like whatever wardrobe they want to place. You say, okay, first this person is going to walk in, then it's going to come around the corner, might grab something from the fridge, and then it's going to turn around and it's going to walk to the rest of the house. You might say, well, let's do this in an LED wall. Can we do this in an LED wall? Do we have to build the whole set? Maybe, maybe not. We have a tool, a plugin that you will see in a second, the link for it. And this is a procedural blueprint that allows you just to build the set based on where you're going to shoot it. You can bring it into Unreal Engine and visualize, okay, if I have an LED wall, where do I need to put, how much do I need to create as a set? How much can be set extension on the LED wall? Because maybe you are constraining budget. Maybe you're constraining the size of your stage, the LED wall. Maybe, they did some shoots and they need to do some pickup shoots later on just to do some shot that they decided to add later on just to make the edit a little stronger. So you bring all those tools in Unreal Engine. You have your VCAM, and you have the DP or the art director to say, okay, I like this. Let's take a bookmark. You're going to see at the bottom, I took a bookmark over there. And then you go, okay, then later on, we go to this position. You bookmark it. And you're going to see in a second that those bookmarks can be accessed on Unreal Engine. So you say, okay, I understand. They're using this kind of lensing, this kind of film. You place those red icons are the bookmarks. So you have an idea of like how they're planning to shoot it. And now you bring the visualization of the LED wall, and you say, okay, if I am shooting from this angle, how much floor do I see? The yellow would be what represents the floor. How much wall do you see? And then you start seeing, yeah, I'm not going to see the contact of the actor's leg. I'm not going to see the contact to the floor. Therefore, I don't need to build potentially the stage floor. I might be able just to have whatever floor it is, and because they're going to be photographed from the knees up, and the wall is far enough that we're not going to have a moire, then we probably can reshoot that on the wall. And then Ellen will provide the Twinmotion file to you guys, and then you bring it into Unreal Engine, and then you go a few days later, you have in the LED wall. And because they probably built the set, and maybe they tore it down, so they have to quickly.
We did tear it down.
So I'll just give you an example, use cases. What we use for that, we use the post-human sport pack for free, just to play some characters. And this is the plugin that we use. Trent Atwood is an amazing solution architect that unfortunately is not with Epic anymore. And he's available, because you guys are looking amazing people. The same as Felipe Rebors, awesome people, awesome artists. And on this, you can download the tutorial. There is a documentation how to use the visualization. And you can also download the plugin for free, in case you're guys planning to do things like this. And so now let's prove it. This was a proof of concept that Felipe and I, with Ellen, we did together just to prove to, I don't know if we can say the name of the production that we work with,
I think this is Paper Girls coming up, right?
Well, we did another one.
Oh, well, For All Mankind, we did do it. We can talk about it. I can't show you anything because it doesn't air until November, but we did a full LED wall setup of our Mars base exterior with a rover driving through it. And it was all Twinmotion coming in that we had built, and just for our own purposes, because no VFX that would use it later. But Juan got this Twinmotion model of a massive Mars base onto the wall in 4 days. No 12 weeks of redoing models or remaking things or retexturing. It's literally just 4 days, prepping it through the pipeline and like turning on some lights and adding some motion controls. And it looked spectacular.
Yes. So the goal here with this proof of concept was just to educate a lot of the art department. We worked really close with the Art Directors Guild and the AAC, our American Society of Cinematographers, and ACG. We work with them because we want to show them the power of these tools, because we want them to feel comfortable working with these tools. They get familiar. So the next time when they have a project that it might benefit from using this technology, they say, you know what, I understand it, let's go for it. Let's work with teams like this, like Ellen team, they understand Twinmotion, Unreal Engine. They work with teams like you, that you can actually do amazing content. And they were like, yeah, let's go, well, let's shoot this. So that's what we wanted to show them. And we did this proof of concept where we bring the content on the wall. So just to carry on the story that we were telling here, as we were planning the shoot in Ellen's house, and then we're like, okay, how is gonna look that on the wall? Let's show you, right? So that's Philippe, actually, in the middle, the cameraman. And we have Nick. This is the Epic LA lab. That's where I live part-time when I'm not at home. So we have a wall here. As you can see, the inside, you see kind of like a window moving. That's what we call the inner frustum. That's the perspective of the camera projected on the LED wall. And then you see outside is what we call it the outer viewports. It is basically a static. It's not a static. It's just the environment projected on this big LED wall just to produce accurate reflections and accurate lighting. And this is how it looks on camera. You might see previously the perspective was kind of weird, but once you shoot it, once you look it through the lens, it just matches. The perspective is correct, the size is correct, and then, you know, it can be integrated, you know, having fun. And then you can light it with light cards, digital light cards, or bring real light on the set. So this is just to show you how a scene coming from, it was SketchUp or?
This was SketchUp.
SketchUp.
Yes.
It came a scene from SketchUp. They spent some time in Twinmotion beautifying it. They gave it to us. We brought it into Unreal Engine, and then we just put it on the wall. So I'm just proving you the whole cycle and the results, and you guys can help. So I'm gonna just pass it to Simon so you can finish it up.
Yeah, so just to summarize, we've talked about a lot of things here, lots of benefits that this has raised. So there are many different ways that art directors can work with UE and Twinmotion. There are ways to facilitate remote collaboration teams, departments, companies. Twinmotion is easy to use. Most people use it to create visualizations, but we've shown that you can use Twinmotion throughout the entire design lifecycle of a project, and you can reiterate on that very, very, very quickly. And it allows you to explore ideas, quickly iterate on those designs. So we hope that we've raised awareness of some of the different tools that you could use yourselves on your own projects, and we'd love to open it up now for questions and answers.
Ellen, do you want to final thoughts or anything that we missed?
Well, I just want to say that that particular test you just did would have been so helpful to me 2 years ago, because we did tear down this set. We spent a lot of money building it, many, many months sourcing all the different, very specific things the designer wanted, and someone decided that we no longer needed it, which is never true. And by the end of this show, we had a list of reshoots. And we're building a massive finale set, but we had to also break off 20 carpenters and painters and craftsmen to rebuild that set, which we've just shown we didn't need. That was I didn't even tell Philippe, but that was the shot we needed, just someone walking through that door. But we rebuilt the entire physical set on stage instead. So this is where you can actually save a lot of time reusing the assets you've already made, which is fantastic.